In the off chance you've been living under a rock for the past decade, there has been a sensation going on, which has drastically shaped country music. I'm talking about, of course, the bro and boyfriend or pop era of country music. And I'm not talking about the pop country era of Patsy Cline or Taylor Swift. This period of time saw a drastic shift in the way songs were written and produced to the point where every song was practically the same, like they were clones. And it didn't just affect the music, it affected the artists themselves. Over the period between 2010 and 2019, women began to be played less and less on radio, and it didn't get as much as an advertising market compared to men. Now, there has always been a gap between men and women in country, but it was never to this extent. In 2018, there were no women in the top 20 country songs for the first time in history, and it's because of these two subgenres. But first, some background knowledge. It's highly debated on what truly started or ignited the bro era of country music. Some say Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean, or Blake Shelton, but I'd say it started because of two artists. Both debuted in 2006 and would forge different yet powerful paths in music, Eric Church and Taylor Swift. Now, don't get me wrong, I love these two and they're some of my all-time favorites, but I began to view them as the more conclusive origin. Taylor's debut record is where I can really pinpoint the whole stereotypical terms of jeans, trucks, and late nights began. And after that, it slowly began to creep into most artists for years to come. Meanwhile, Eric Church brought a unique perspective of country music, blending traditional sounds with hard rock and roll, and this would culminate in his third album, Chief, a massive crossover hit which, honestly looking back, was a rock album. And all of this was slowly building to... Oh yes, it's time to talk about you-know-who. Florida Georgia Line is by far the most famous country act of the past decade, and not gonna lie, I was a fan of their music growing up. Not so much now as I know what quality music looks like, but their power in country music is undeniable. Their journey began with Cruise, a monster hit single which went on to be one of, if not the most successful country song of the past 50 years. Their debut album, Here's to the Good Times, would sell millions, and shortly after, every major label artist started scrambling to copy their sound to sell just as much. And what you were left with were bogus off-brand copies of Florida Georgia Line, leaving the actual intellectual artists scrounging for scraps. And long story short, they would hold a tight grip on the genre for nearly half a decade. Meanwhile, pop country came to fruition between 2015 and 2016, with pretty boy douchebags singing about how much they love their girl or how much they miss their girl. Literally every song from them was about a girl. People like this included Sam Hunt, Cole Swindell, and Thomas Rhett. Most of their songs had cheap chords, bargain bin simp lyrics, and an Adobe Flash brand drum loop. And every time they'd push a song to radio, it would hit number one in no time flat. And while bro country was still dominant during this time, all of that would change in 2017. Sam Hunt would release Body Like a Back Road, a clever yet heavily douchified song about a girl's body is like a back road. While the song was heavily controversial, it didn't stop it from hitting number one for half a year. It was a crossover hit, and once again the genre drastically shifted. We went from southern rock mixed with beers and trucks to snap tracks and corny love lyrics. 2018 saw the rise of so many pop-influenced artists like Kane Brown and Gabby Barrett, and most of all, Dan and Shay. Dan and Shay are practically the pop version of Florida Georgia Line. Their harmonies were great, their hairstyles changed every few years, they had monster hits like Tequila, Speechless, and 10,000 Hours, and the duo currently holds the tight grip on Nashville's industry today. Now comes the big question, which is better? I want to clarify, neither of these subgenres are good. They are both lifeless in their own aspects. Bro country is often overwhelming with its bombastic rock vibe, and boyfriend country is boring as hell with its cheap percussion and simp-like lyrics. And there is no gray area with these genres. Every song released under them are the same in almost every aspect. But now that we're in a new decade, a lot of people have been looking back at what they consider to be the better of the two. The lesser of two evils. So for starters, bro country. Most bro songs carry a heavy, bombastic tone filled with electric guitars, overpowered drums, and often some actual traditional instruments. But most of the time, it was douchey southern rock. and the lyrical output over this time was not great, to say the least. A lot of the songs centered around key adjectives, and while the songs themselves had different melodies and whatnot, the songwriting was mostly the same, and it never relented. Now, there are some songs in the bro era I still like to this day, a few being Confession by Florida Georgia Line and Dirt Road Anthem by Jason Aldean. Pop country, on the other hand, had a more mellow, relaxed sound, which often was underwhelming. And while the writing was less repetitive in terms of wordplay, the song's central theme was always the same. Either they're singing about how much they love this woman, or they say how much they miss them. Kinda like the comment section of a Twitch stream. One key improvement I'd have to say is the melodies, which got tighter and had more of a note range, such as instead of the same note being sang on a chorus over and over. And at least some pop country songs had more of a driven narrative, rather than hooking up in a truck on a dirt road drinking beer till the sun rises. However, pop country songs definitely tanked in the instrumental department. I've never seen a genre so lazily made. Country music is known for authentic instrumentation and rich acoustics. A standard pop country song just has artificial sounds made from a laptop, and it feels like it was made by a freshman student in music tech. They just slap cheap chords attached to a snap track, snapping on beats 2 and 4, like they're actively trying to be a distorted copy of actual pop stars who know what they're doing in the production process. Despite this, some actual good pop country songs are Hard to Forget by Sam Hunt and Speechless by Dan and Shay. And yes, these are actually good songs, they're just overplayed. Speaking of which, I've only talked about the music. I've yet to really talk about the lasting impact these two genres have had on the industry. Like I said, bro country saw the disappearance of a lot of female representation in the mainstream side of country music. People like Miranda Lambert, Carrie Underwood began to chart less. People like Casey Musgraves never truly broke out because of the bro era. And it wasn't just women. A lot of quality artists who were already well established sort of just disappeared, like Scotty McCreery, or people like Sturgill Simpson, who has a large following, doesn't get the airplay representation or corporate power a lot of other artists have. Some artists, while known for making quality music, sunk to a new low, actively trying to make douchey music just to score points on the radio. And it's because of this people began to view country as a joke, that it all really is pandering southern lifestyle. If I had to say any good came out of the bro era, is that people began to look more and more into the indie and Texas scene. For people like Cody Jinks and Cody Johnson, who began to grow massive followings despite not being a chart topper like people in Nashville. But overall, the everlasting effects of the bro country era have been negative and left a respected industry scarred. During the pop country era, things saw a little bit of a turnaround. With a more pop-oriented sound, women slowly began showing up again as the new sound of country music was more universally appealing. Bro country is pretty self-explanatory, it's mostly marketed for men. Meanwhile, the tone and narrative style of pop country was able to be done by both men and women. You had newcomers like Ingrid Andress, Kelsey Ballerini, and Carly Pearce, who actually put time and effort into their music, to making #1 hits on the radio. Maren Morris became a superstar in her own right. Casey Musgraves made a sweep at the Grammys, nabbing the highly coveted Album of the Year for the overall genres. Miranda Lambert made a big comeback with her single Bluebird off her latest album Wildcard. And while I'm not truly satisfied, I can admit it was a drastic improvement than what came before. But while improvements began to spring, the original problems with pop country still refused to go away. A large chunk of the pop country by women was still stagnant and boring. While women finally began to be played at a larger rate, the ratio of men to women on the country chart was still in a large gap, with a near 60 to 15% ratio between men and women. While things are getting better, we still have a long way to go, and you can really tell more and more people are getting sick of the Nashville outfit and looking for more quality artists, primarily thanks to country music commentators such as Grady Smith and Saving Country Music. A lot of low-profile and Texas artists are finally hitting #1, such as Tyler Childers and Parker McCollum. The two biggest country artists right now, Morgan Wallen and Luke Combs, don't really identify as pop or bro, and they are bringing about a slowly rising neo-traditional movement. As for my verdict, in the end, country music identifies as rich instrumentation with simple stories told in profound ways, and neither subgenre really accomplishes that at all. Normally, I'd prefer the writing, which pop country does better, but they don't do so much better than bro country, as they can get stagnant over time, especially due to their cheap production value. In terms of the music itself, I have a soft spot for bro country because instrumentally it actively tried to be good, and pop country is so lazy. But despite its blandness, it allowed for more quality artists to emerge, allowing for women to chart high again. And despite the nostalgic value I have for the bro era, pop country has opened up several avenues for something better. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the ends justify the means. The pop country era is going to be difficult to endure, but I truly believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. A light representing all of the aspects that have been missing in country music for a long time. At the end of the day, music is totally subjective, and I'm not saying don't listen to these genres and the songs that came out of them. If you still enjoy these songs, that's okay. I'm just really hard on the genre for this because I know they can actively be better. Country music at its best is the best kind of music, telling honest stories that can carry so much emotional weight, bring joy, bring crushing sadness. They can be a spectrum of emotions, but over the past decade, that spectrum has begun to disappear, and I'm trying to highlight why it has become this way. And obviously, these are just pieces in a bigger picture which resulted in the genre being tainted. I just really needed to get this out of my system before I highlight the great aspects of country music. Thank you, and good night.